all signs. This is the Mission and Goals podcast. Radio check over. Hang in there, buddy. We've got you. You're not alone.
G'day, Phil. How are you?
Not bad, mate. You?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks for allowing us to have this conversation today and making the time. I've been asking around the veteran community about you, and
Don't believe everything you hear. Don't believe everything you hear.
there's very good word. Like, the veteran community has a very positive word to say about you and what you're doing for the community. So just wanted to say thank you on behalf of the veteran community for everything you're doing with not only the veteran community, but with Townsville as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Kicking into it, mate, since we are very short of time, I wanted to ask you about what I think is a very defining moment in your life. And I only read about this in an article doing research leading up to this podcast. And it was an article about how your wife pulled you in front of a mirror and asked who you were.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in the answer you had looking into the mirror, and then the journey from the person who you were to even leading to winning the award, OAM, through to becoming a politician. Because that's really intriguing, because I feel like a lot of veterans were in the same position you were. And so getting out of that mentality is really important for people to understand.
Yeah, well, I think that what really pulled me out is because I didn't have an answer.
Yep.
Getting in front of the mirror and, getting asked, who are you? And saying, I don't know.
Yep.
Is what became the driving force. From someone that was so proud, someone that was very, honoured to serve, to then being, I don't know who I am. I don't feel well about myself. I've got into this rabbit hole where I don't think I can get out. That's what kind of was the wake-up call. Yeah.
What was your first steps? Like, from that moment, you're looking at yourself. What did you decide to do next in order to change that mentality, the mindset, who you were?
Put all the alcohol in the bin.
Yep.
Put all the cigarettes in the bin. Went and bought them again, and then did it again and put them in the bin.
Yep.
So it's a roller coaster of a journey, and I think the number one thing that people need to understand is it's okay to have slip-ups. It's okay to fall over. But getting back on the horse and going in the right direction was key. And then pretty much a couple of weeks later, no more smoking. Limited my drinking, getting focused on back what was going to be the goal. And the goal was helping other people, but essentially it was helping me. Helping others helped me.
Yep, I completely understand that. Even with what I'm trying to achieve, it's helping me a lot as well.
Yeah.
With one of your goals, was it to become a politician?
No way, dude. No, I don't think any normal person wakes up and goes, oh, I want to be a politician. And if they do, they're not normal. I kind of fell into it, and I wanted to help people, and that kind of view, and the current member at the time wasn't really fighting for Townsville. And when I got into politics, I didn't even know there was a Senate. So that's how naive I was. To be honest, I still don't really know what the Senate does, but it was from a place of purity that I got involved.
Okay, awesome. And the next thing I'm curious about, because now you're in a position, Shadow Assistant Minister for Defence, you have been affected greatly by war, injured at war. Your post-service and life after war is affected from your war service. You now may have to be a part of the decision-making process to send men to go through what you went through. How do you wrap your head around that? How do you come to terms with it? Is it a big turmoil? Is it, especially with what's happening around the world at the moment and what could potentially kick off? Can you give us your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, the rescue mission in Afghanistan, I was one of the decision makers on that, and working closely with Peter Dutton, who was the Minister for Defence at the time, and sending one RAR over, which is my old unit, I had to look them in the face and their families in the face. I pushed very hard to send one area, not just because it's my old unit, but they were the ready, the ready battalion. Any ready battalion, I wouldn't have sent. It's not a special forces job, and I know what their role is, and it's not this. So I was very keen to get the boys over to do their job, but also knowing how dangerous it was and putting them in harm's way. I took all the responsibility of what could happen. And it's like in the veteran community now, if there's a death by suicide, I take it as a failure and a personal failure, because it means we haven't done enough, that this person couldn't find support. So sending soldiers off to a dangerous area or into war, I take very seriously, and but I'm their biggest advocate, but I'm also terrified of what happens.
Yeah, completely understand. It'd be a hard thing to debate, to have that discussion in your own head. So thankfully you're making that decision.
But you know what it was like, young deer in a battalion. What was the only thing in the world you wanted to do?
Just wanted to deploy.
Yep. And so I think like that, but then I also see the young mum holding the baby, kissing your partner goodbye, and I'm looking at her going, I just hope we can make sure that he comes home safely.
Yep. Yeah, awesome. Now I want to touch on your position as Shadow Assistant. Sorry, you want to say that?
Yeah, you're
Shadow
right.
Assistant Minister for Defence.
Yep.
Can you explain what that is? As you said just before, you don't know, like you're having a joke about the Senate. Can you explain what your position is, and then how much power do you actually have, and is it a massive uphill battle in the political world to try and get what you think is best for the community and best for the veteran community?
Yeah, right. That's a tough one. So Andrew Hastie is the Shadow Minister for Defence, and I'm the assistant, so I'm one underneath him. His job is to work with and also take the fight to Richard Marles, who's the current Minister for Defence. And my job is to look inwards at our people and go, how do we best support the soldiers, the sailors, the aviators with the best equipment, make sure they want to stay, but also support them if they got injured from their service. When it comes to wielding power, I wield a big stick in the Liberal Party because of my service, but we are in opposition. So the opposition's role is to keep the government to account, put forward good ideas, but be also an alternative government. So we're coming up with our own policies. My view is that the current Defence Minister is quite weak and not good at his job, and you can see that through wanting to be called the Deputy Prime Minister, not the Minister for Defence, always overseas, playing the back nine somewhere. He's not really putting the soldiers, sailors and aviators first. I think that the coalition, the Liberal National Party, does it better. Under Peter Dutton, walked in, made changes straight away, led the department. Anytime the current CDF wanted to come up with some crazy idea, he'd push back and be like, no, we're not doing that, because the minister's in charge. So right now we're preparing ourselves for when we'll go to an election, and if everything goes well, we'll go into government. Depending on what Peter thinks, I'll either stay in this position or go to another one, or not have one at all. It's up to him. But I really like supporting the defence community, and we get things done. The minister in the government side, he can't really tell me no or I'm wrong, because he's not one of us. And Peter's very lucky to have, I think, 7 or 8 veterans, a couple of combat veterans. I'm the only wounded veteran, so we kind of wield a big stick when it comes to making change.
Yeah, awesome. And now talking about part of your position, you just mentioned it then, the budget. Now, it's a 216-page document that I've had a look at, unless I'm reading a different document. I can't make sense of it. Now, you're the shadow government, so you would have some quite big thoughts on the current Defence 2023-2024 budget. Mm-hmm. Can you give an overview of the Defence budget, of the major expenditures, and then where you disagree with and how you would change it?
Sure. So the biggest one is the infantry fighting vehicles, going from 400 to 129, which pretty much cuts out the asset completely. It means out of every other motorised unit, including engineers, including medics, including everyone else that operates them, they now won't have them. So 3RR will be the only ones that will get the vehicles, which is good, but I want more, right? Because you got to have the equipment that you're going to train in and fight in. We've seen cuts to Adelaide. And I agree, you've got to bolster the north. However, that doesn't mean you cut the south. And we believe that this government doesn't really have its eye on the ball with what's going to happen. I don't think you need to read the tea leaves to know that we could be in a very serious conflict within, the experts say within 5 years, right? So if you've got defence cuts or cutting defence industry, then how are you going to be ready to fight? And morale is tanked. So you've got all these soldiers that want to get out, and instead of asking why, they come up with stupid ideas, and they'll go, "We'll give 50 grand to someone over there." It doesn't make sense. They're not targeting the group with the most knowledge either. So they'll giving 50 grand to, say, a young digger who's just finished his 4 years, which is fine, but then not giving the same to a sergeant or a woe too. And I think that's a failure. I think the pay disparity between an RSM and a CO is huge. RSM of Army to Chief of Army, probably looking at a pay disparity of 200 grand. Like, that's not really good enough. And we got to be looking at what our people want to do. They want to deploy, and they want to train with other nations. They want to get into the fight if they can, but they want to serve their nation. And I don't think the current government's supporting that. I would like to have a training team in a platoon strength through all different calls, all different services, and say you're going over to the training team Hawaii, other one's going training team Okinawa, other one's going to the UK or into Poland or wherever they may be, but in a platoon strength. Because right now you'll send 3 or 4 captains, great, another officer's trip, but we'll have all of them come here. We need to be going overseas, and people will stay because they'll be like, "Oh, I want to get on that rotation because going to Okinawa and working with the Marines is really cool because they do CQB this way." And you have that carrot that keeps people in. And then once you keep people in, you want to look at, okay, what's on our operational tempo? Are we supporting the US in putting ships into the Red Sea, which is topical today? Are we sending more people into Poland to train Ukraine? What are we doing in Israel? Like, all these kind of things that people, we should be looking at instead of sitting on our hands going, "Oh yeah, our ADF can do something else in Australia or another field X," because we do the field already. We do so much field. We need to have that kind of deployable skill set where we can send people over, and not just to the same countries like PNG or Malaysia. We want to be pushing in with the US, the UK, France, other nations like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, it was one of my questions is there seems to be a growing level of distrust between our current serving members and the government and our veterans and the government. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that and where do you think it's stemming from? And then how you think we can move forward to try and bridge that gap and that relationship between the members of defence and veterans and the government again.
Yeah, I think that soldiers, like I was, for a long time would go, we're unhappy, but we won't speak out. We're seeing now people speaking out. We're seeing veterans being much more organised, much more loud. We're seeing still serving that are willing to put their careers on the line and speak out. I think that the whole, whether it's the DSR or any other review or any other senior person in government or defence, they're not asking the right questions. So if you rock up to, say, out to Laverack somewhere and you sit down and everyone's there, you don't say, what are we doing well? You say things like, how can we help? What kit is shit? What can be better? What do you need from your government to make you do your job better? Peter Dutton did it well when he was first made Minister for Defence, came to Townsville, picked me up, went out to Laverack, and he said, okay, I want to go talk to everyone, want to have a really good conversation. What do you think I should do? I said, well, you move all the officers over there, separate them from the enlisted. And he's looking at me like, kind of like, oh, why? And I go, because you want people to speak freely. And you tell them, tell me the truth, speak freely. Because if you have their boss looking overhead, they're not going to outlay as much to the minister, the big dad of defence. So he got out and he said, what about the media? And I said, tell the media to take a hike. You can talk to them whenever. Gets out, does all this, sits down. He has a bunch of 3RA soldiers going, the APC's shithouse. We've had it since Vietnam. Why are we operating with this? We've got engineers telling this, their issues. It was really good because he pulled out a notepad, started taking notes. And he's like, okay, this is what we can fix. And it was the same with the MRH-90. We went out to 5 Ave, and we're going out to HMAS Canberra, and they had the Chinook ready, and there was some MRH-90s there. And I said, I want to take the MRH-90, knowing full well that they were going to say no, or it's not working, or it's unsafe. And all the pilots who were really good, they were like, oh, well, it's good, but we can't use this at the moment. And then I had someone come over and go, it's not safe for you to fly in. I was like, oh, well, this is interesting. Grabbed Dutton, walked over, and there was some loadmasters there, and we moved the pilots on. And the loadmaster's like, yeah, it's not fit for purpose. It's shit. They don't start, or they won't get off the ground. Their maintenance supply chain's not working. And so people will argue and go, oh, it's a great aircraft. That's cool. It's not fit for purpose. And if it can't get serviced in a time frame or get the parts for it, then it's not safe. And if I can't get in it because it's not safe, don't put my soldiers in it, because if you can't put politicians in it because you're worried about a headline, then you can't be putting people in it that are trying to train with what they'll fight in.
That's very fair. That's very fair. The thanks for that. With that growing distrust and with especially veterans in the government, we've got the Royal Commission into suicide happening at the moment. I've had veterans tell me that they feel like the government wants them to die, to commit suicide. They feel abandoned. They feel like the government, it'd be easier if they did, because the government wants it because it'd be less of a burden, less expensive, many reasons. I wanted to get your thoughts on that, because that isn't just one or two veterans that have said this. It's actually quite a few veterans have said this, and to me it's quite disheartening and really needs to change. And I wanted to get your thoughts on it, and then if off the top of your head, if you could think of something that could maybe change their mind for now. That'll be a hard ask, but at least let them know we're on their side, because it was really disheartening.
Well, once you've lost trust in the government or a political party who holds the government, it's very hard to get that back. And as much as I dislike Albanese or Richard Marles or Matt Keogh, who's the DVA minister, I don't think they would want people to die. I know that lots of time in discussion around veterans and how to support our veterans in the Liberal Party room occurs, because I'm involved in it. It's hard to talk about because you've really got to bring everyone on this long journey, and often you're talking about your personal experience through it, because no one, especially the veterans around the table, don't want to see people doing it tough, and definitely don't want to see people dying. I think DVA has lost its way in what it's supposed to do, and I think it should change. So the Department of Veterans Affairs, if we're going to call it what it is an insurance company. You get injured, they give you money. Very simplistic.
Work cover.
Yeah. But right now you've got DVA gives money to a provider that does equine therapy, pays for taxis, pays for services, pays for ex-service organisations, and then gets all confused about what its job is. I think that DVA should have separate the kind of the ex-service organisation supports out of its remit. So DVA itself gets money, and all its job is to support the veteran, not to anyone else, not to a middle ex-service organisation. It goes DVA, pensions, lump sums to the veteran. That's all it does. Its whole job. And then process claims, whole job. Then over the other side, you've got a body that looks at ESOs, looks at if they're doing the right thing, if they need more support, if they're a zombie business, so if they make sure there's actually people there, making sure they're getting the support, go through the process of auditing, making sure they're fit for purpose. And so when money travels into them, making sure that it goes to the veteran or how it works, but separating it out of DVA, because DVA's wait times are too long. They contribute to poorer mental health. Wait times contribute to death. It's really bad. So I think they're confused on what their job is. So to help them unconfuse themselves, separate maybe the bit that doesn't need to be in there, which is the ex-service organisations, which is the therapeutic side, and have that done and looked after by a separate group. Money to veteran, claims processed. That's all their job should be.
Because, yeah, I agree. Because right now, a couple of years wait for a claim.
It's ridiculous. How?
It's like mine only just came through, and I discharged 3 years ago. And I know guys that are still waiting, and then I know guys that they look at the paperwork and won't do it. They're like, it's too much for them. They get too stressed out about it.
And advocates on top of that. So you've got majority of advocates are volunteers. Now, volunteerism slowly dying off, and younger veterans don't want to volunteer. That's fine. I think there should be a model where our advocates are getting paid. Now, if you want to volunteer, that's cool. We're not here to hurt or your pensions or anything like that. But if you can get, because the pensions are different from the VEA to Merca and the VEA TPI and Merca TPI. But if you can get younger people mentored in to take that standard to be on top of their game, then we can keep the supports going. But the wait time, DVA either needs to do its job or get burnt to the ground and rebuilt and done again, because waiting any more than 12 weeks in the civilian world, there would be a riot. So we shouldn't be waiting 3 years.
Yeah, I think most of the veteran community would agree. We think we need to burn it to the ground and rebuild it, because it is a lot of the hurt and pain at the moment in the veteran community is DVA, especially things with the DVA privacy breach, with the uni down in Adelaide. I wanted to get your thoughts on that. What happened, and then what are the likely outcomes, and then how do we prevent this from happening again? Because DVA is a government agency, organisation, part of the government. So how do we implement the correct measures to make sure that doesn't happen again?
Yeah, so DVA has a secretary that answers to the minister. And like, I was affected by this. And I used to get phone calls and I'd have no idea what they were, so just hang up. Like, I ain't got time for this. I just saw a lawyer's letter or a group that's investigating and seeing if there was any breaches, because I heard someone say that there's implied consent when you go through your claims process. You may tick something that says we can share your details or something, and when you're going through the claims process, one of 9 million pages, and your advocate's running through it, you're looking at them going, I'm running on coffee and hate, right? Like, so someone said that could be in there. I haven't seen that. So they'll need smarter minds than mine, and out of government. Don't let government do it. Let an external body do it. to see if there's been any breaches. And if there's been breaches, there should be absolute massive repercussions. If there hasn't, though, we need to then put in a block to say that this can't happen again, because a university calling up, Jimmy down the road who's quite unwell, wounded overseas, going through surgeries, relationships, rocky, doesn't need some professor calling him up going, hey, you want to partake in this mates program, which is a play on words. Like, it's a play on words to get you involved.
Call it something nice. And people
yeah. Well, you say mates, you're like, oh, yeah, mate, we're big on mateship. So I haven't seen if they got grilled at Senate estimates yet, but it's something that we should just be tracking. I don't think writing yet is what's needed. I think we need to get the answers first, because if they've snuck in a little box that says tick this and we can share your information, then we need to remove that box, and we need to make sure that the university culls everyone's contact details.
Yeah, 100% agree. Thank you. And now the Royal Commission.
Yep.
Do you have much input? Are you amongst that? Do you know much what's going on? Do you know likely outcomes? Do you know what they said is the problem? From what I've heard, it looks like for future soldiers who join, that transition process might be an easier one, but for current veterans, it hasn't really changed anything.
Yeah, well, the Joint Transition Authority should be up and running, or it's getting up and running, and that's a soft landing from when you discharge to when you land outside. Because when I got out, it was the gate open, the gate closed. You're in, you're a guest. You're out, you're a pest. Now there is more of a transition kind of soft landing. The Royal Commission, so I gave evidence. I've listened but stayed at arm's length, because I think the last thing anyone really wants is to see politicians diving too far into it. It needs to be at arm's length. Their recommendations, I could have told you them at the start, like you could have. Their new kind of thought process is to have its own standalone body, similar to what the National Commissioner was starting out. But I do think the Royal Commission was absolutely needed. The National Commissioner that was put together before the Royal Commission, if they recommend that, which is what I think they're leading to, that's a good thing. It's a really good thing. I think there needs to be a focus on the transition side, but also what happens post-service life. So you need meaningful engagement, meaningful employment in your life. I know not everyone can work. I get that. But you have to do something. And, it's tough sometimes to say, because people go through their own ebbs and flows. I went through it. And I reckon if I was in my darkest days and you knocked on my door and said, no, you have to do something, I would have been pretty pissed. But you need something meaningful in your life. Otherwise, having that 9 a.m. beer or doing something that you shouldn't at 9 a.m. isn't going to help you. It's going to hurt you, and you're going to end up most likely very unwell, if not dead. So getting people to do something that they love, whether it's volunteering or working, whatever it is, but something that gives you meaning, needs to be a key focus out of the Royal Commission, and should be a focus of government programs, should be a focus of DVA. I wish they were split, so there'd be this other body, because you want people to wake up and do something they love and they're happy. I don't care if it's surfing, teaching kids how to surf on the Sunshine Coast. Like, if that's giving you meaning in your life, man, I'm cool with that. But having people not leave the house, that's the problem.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And that was my problem for a year and a half. I didn't leave my couch, drinking and doing all that sorts of bad things, till I was suicidal, and then finding something to do and finding purpose and identity again, because once you put the uniform down, you sort of lose it all. And it's been healing for myself, let alone for others. So, yeah, I completely 100% agree. I wanted to touch on Ukraine.
Yep.
Are we allowed to talk about Ukraine?
Go for it.
Beautiful. I just wanted to get your stance on the war. Obviously, Australia's just signed up to send more soldiers over next year. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that? Where do you think the war is going? Do you think it's going to escalate? Are what we're being told in the general media, is that true? Is it propaganda? Is it hyped up? What can you share with us?
Well, I've got to be careful because the government wants to bring in a misinformation bill, which means if we say anything they don't like, they'll cancel you. So, which we're violently against.
Yeah.
So, Ukraine, Vladimir Putin is a blood-soaked dictator, and I actually think he's maneuvering different to what everyone thought was going to happen. Everyone thought that he was going to invade Ukraine, either roll through it or have a bit of a go, then come back. What we're seeing now is a very slow push from him. I think he's trying to slow down Ukraine's kind of supply chains advances because Zelensky needs to get pretty much aid and donation from other nations to be able to fight. We've sent people to Poland. I think that's quite public. To teach people on how to get out of a PMV, because we gave them some PMVs, how to fight out of one, which is a good thing because at the start they didn't have soldiers in PMVs. They had farmers, they had brickies, they had people in the community driving PMVs towards tanks. Anyone that knows anything about the PMV is it's not a tank, it's a
It's a semi-armored vehicle that can help you survive if it gets blown up, but don't guarantee, and it doesn't really have an effective weapon to fight.
No, and it's kind of a transport, like a tactical transport vehicle, where you drive somewhere, get out, and then advance to fight. They weren't using it as that for a bit. They were using it to fight tanks, and they died because of it. So Australian soldiers are over teaching them how to get out, making sure that they're facing the right way, all that kind of good stuff. But the war there had changed very quickly from skirmishing in bunkers, driving PMVs, making fake tanks drive across the paddock, to aerial drone strikes, like craziness that I've never seen before. Daisy chaining drones.
There's a company here in Townsville that next month has a contract. I think it's 1,000 drones a month they're sending to Ukraine. It's a veteran business. Like it's one of my diggers.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
So they're daisy chaining them. So imagine being overseas. Imagine being just at high range, and you see a drone come overhead, and it's got some bang on it. And you're like, okay, I can probably shoot it out, or if it kamikazes, it will have this little kind of explosion area. And then seeing 20 all linked together, flying all to the one area.
Scary.
Mate, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
And I think what Ukraine has proven is guerrilla fighting does work, and they are fighting hard to win. They don't plan on losing, and I think Putin's soldiers didn't expect this. And one of the biggest fears at the start was I thought while Russia's doing this and goes towards Poland or near Poland, NATO nation, all the NATO countries respond to Poland to support without him going in there, and then China takes Taiwan. That's what I thought.
That's what I thought as well.
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah.
And I think that probably was on the cards at some stage, and then they didn't expect daisy chain drones and PMVs and guerrilla fighting and soldiers from different armies around the world joining the fight. We've had Australians killed, some mates from Townsville that went over to help to fight and sadly were killed. And those kind of war fighters, or those kind of people that are trained to a standard like us or the States or the UK, I think really enhanced their fighting capability against a bunch of Russians who don't have that fight, and they haven't fought for a long time, and I don't think they were prepared for the warrior mindset and the big fight that they were kind of put to them.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy what's happening over there. Hundreds of thousands of deaths.
Yeah.
Now, thanks for sharing that with us. I also want to touch on your thoughts on Israel-Palestine
Hmm.
and the response from Israel from the October 7th attack
Mm.
and what's happening at the moment.
How controversial.
Yeah, it is controversial. Um, but I think it's very relevant with the being around veterans and war. And
Yeah. No, I agree. I was smiling because this is so
I didn't
so
know if you could
controversial.
actually answer them,
No,
so
I
I've written them
can.
down here with a question mark.
No, I can. I try to answer everything as best I can. So, what happened at the music festival that Hamas did to many citizens from around the world, but mostly Israeli citizens, was an act of terror. And Hamas is a registered terrorist organization here and in majority of Western nations around the world. The violent murders, the beheadings, the rapes, the killing of children, killing of babies, killing of the innocent was deplorable and should be condemned at every chance. Um, and I think that taking hostages back to um, back and hiding them and this is what lots of people kind of miss the thought of. It's not the movies. The Hamas isn't hiding them in Palestine on the sixth level in the corner with a light on them. They are in bunkers spread out. They are all not all together. It's pretty crazy. And to try and get them back, it was even you know more kind of I didn't think anyone was going to come home. I thought they were all going to be killed. Israel's response says two things. There is no such thing as a proportionate response to an attack that happened on them, because a proportionate response would mean that Israel went to an innocent music festival in Palestine, raped and killed, and did what they did. That's proportionate. So journalists and commentators saying that there needs to be a proportionate response, it just clearly don't understand what war is. Um, Israel made the decision to do two things: bomb Hamas areas, and then also take a ground fight to rescue their hostages, but also to eradicate Hamas. Now, there's been lots of calls for a ceasefire, and no one wants to see the innocent killing of anyone. The issue with calling a ceasefire, you're not calling it a ceasefire between two cooperative nations, because one is a terrorist group and one is a free nation. So Israel's view to eradicate and kill and wipe out Hamas is the decision that they have made, and how they do that is up to their strategists and what they do. I don't think that I do think if Israel just stopped fighting Hamas, now how they do that, it's up to them. I think Hamas would rebuild. They would do the same thing again at some other stage. I think that wiping out a terrorist organization, is a good thing. How they do that though, and minimizing civilian casualties, is something that they have to negotiate with how they do it. And Hamas putting tunnels underneath hospitals is disgraceful, but it's not a formed body fighting a formed body. There's a terrorist group fighting a free nation, and there is people who are caught in the middle, civilians caught in the middle, who aren't allowed to leave. So there was aerial drops of pamphlets, there was media, there was social media saying that Israel's coming in from this side to do this, you should leave that way. They were blocked, and which created all sorts of chaos, I think. And whatever has happened or whatever occurs during this fighting, I think there will be a deep dive on what's occurred. And but I do think that Israel, with their position into to fighting Hamas, will continue. I don't think they will be stopping. It's not really for every other nation to sit back in a nice, comfortable chair, having a steak and a beer, saying you shouldn't do something, because if it happened here, what would we do?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that getting your people back, but also wiping out the terrorist organisation would be something we would do. And when this is not to this level, but similar things have happened previously, the UN and other bodies told Israel, don't, stop and ceasefires and don't do this. The president was pretty clear when he stood up and he said, we're doing this now. I'm not taking advice from people that sit on the other side of the world. And it's very hard to be in their position. We don't want to see innocent people die, though. I would much rather there be a big open plain where they could fight each other and whatever happens, happens. But we both know that terrorist organisations would much rather put a baby on the front of them than go fight properly.
Yeah, fair enough. You alluded to it at the beginning of the podcast. You said within 5 years you think we might be in some other type of major conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think we might be in a major conflict with, and why do you think that?
Yeah, well, definitely not going to start a war here. I think that, well, Middle East right now is kicking off. You've got US destroyers, sailing into the Red Sea. We've got pirates attacking oil ships. We've committed, I saw today, we've committed Australian troops to parts of the Middle East. What that looks like, we don't know yet. I don't think that Albanese will send ships with the States. I probably would. They're not going into to fight. They're going into as a show of force, and the more nations to show of force really does quieten down the bomb throwers. China has said very, very publicly that they will take Taiwan. We should believe them. I don't think we should go, oh, you probably won't. No, we should believe that they will. What does that look like? We've got President Biden, whether he's the president or not, he said that he been committed to going and supporting Taiwan. Does that mean we do? Like, all these things start opening up. Does Russia touch Poland? Poland's a NATO nation. Does that open it up again? Like, there is spot fires, deadly spot fires happening all around the world. And we are a very isolated, lonely island. And that's why AUKUS, so people talk about, the cost of AUKUS and subs and can this work? And it's much more than that. We've now tied ourselves with the superpowers of the world. We are now not sitting in the back seat. We are in the front seat. And we are standing in the middle with our arms linked with the UK and the US. Now, that means we support them, but more so they support us. So I think that we will continue to have a focus in supporting the Pacific, because we all know that China's trying to encroach its way there and build ports and build infrastructure to kind of be more present, offer up state-owned police, all that kind of stuff.
For years.
Yeah, but we want to push them out, right? I got in trouble. I said we were the big brother of the Pacific, but what I mean by that is we are a nation that can help and support, and we are a part of the Pacific family, and we are in a position where we're quite large and quite able to support. So you've got to do that, whilst also keeping your eye on all the deadly spot fires, because if you let one of those spot fires turn into a big flame, then we're in it.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think we would be committing troops in the Israel-Palestine, it's not Israel-Palestine, Israel-Hamas conflict. But that doesn't mean we won't put people in the Red Sea. The US is on their way there now. There was pirates trying to take a BP oil ship. I can't remember where they're from, but you put a couple of shooters on, there's no more pirates. But, you want to...
I wish we, years ago in the Philippines, we were on a Navy boat heading to the Philippines, and we had pirates come up to our boat. The Navy wasn't allowed to do anything. We ratchet strapped the doors shut. They gave us engineers a bunch of shotguns, and they said if they breach there was a section of us with weapons. Everyone else had to hide.
Okay,
That's our Australian Navy.
boo.
Yeah.
No, that's not the rules of engagement, and if they are, it shouldn't be. If you have any vessel come near you in a hostile manner, you engage. Now it's like the old saying when you're growing up, and your mum says, if someone punches you, you can punch them back. Wrong. Why do I want to get a broken nose for?
Yeah.
If you're inside my personal bubble, I'm fighting. And it's the same thing with our ships. It's the same thing with our soldiers. It's the same thing with anyone. Our aircraft. You're not waiting for someone to breach. You're being assertive, and that's your best defense.
That's about all I've got. You've got to go on to another meeting.
I do. Yeah.
So thank you for allowing me to have this conversation with you, inviting me to your office. Thank you for everything. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for everything.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Thanks, mate.